In the city of Ethelgard, the very air tasted of slow, inexorable decay. The sky was an unchanging canvas of grey, a perpetual shroud that seemed to mirror the city's dwindling vitality. For generations, Ethelgard had been a marvel of ingenuity and faith, a sprawling metropolis built and sustained on the colossal stone shoulders of 6 ancient golems. These silent sentinels, known to the people as the Founders, were not mere statues. They were powered by a deep, mystical heart, a life force woven from the very fabric of the earth itself. But now, their immense forms, once humming with latent energy and adorned with glowing runes, were visibly weakening. Cracks spiderwebbed across their stoic stone faces, and great chunks of their monolithic bodies would shear off without warning, cascading into the perpetual gloom below. Lyra, a young woman with hands stained by grease and a spirit stubborn as iron, felt this decay more acutely than most. She was a tinker, a keeper of the city's vast and intricate network of clockwork mechanisms, and her workshop was nestled deep within the belly of the central golem, the great heart giant called Solus. The Arcanists, the city's powerful ruling council of mages, were the sole intermediaries between the people and the Heartstone. From their towering spires, they held a monopoly on all knowledge of the city's ancient workings. Their decree, repeated in hushed tones across the city's crumbling districts, was grim and absolute. The Heartstone, they claimed, was dying. It was a slow, wasting sickness, and its only cure was a terrible, desperate one. They spoke of a necessary sacrifice, a purification of spirit, a grand ritual where they would draw a portion of the populace's life force to replenish the dwindling energy of the Heartstone. It was an agonizing concept, but desperation had stripped the people of their will to protest. They were afraid, and the Arcanists, cloaked in their opulent purple and gold robes, were an unwavering promise of salvation. But Lyra, from her vantage point deep within the heart giant, knew their words were a lie. The Heartstone wasn't giving a mournful, dying whisper, it was gasping, its powerful hum a strained, discordant rattle. It sounded to her like a beautiful song being slowly choked to silence. The moment her fingers brushed the crystal lattice, Lyra felt an instantaneous jolt, not of electricity, but of pure, flowing energy that coursed up her arm and settled deep within her bones. The sensation was exhilarating, and with it came an understanding that went beyond mere knowledge. This was the source of the resonance she had felt. It was the song of restoration, a complex, multi-layered melody that had been woven into the very fabric of the city's creation. The song, she realized, was the Heartstone's true purpose. The stone was not a battery to be fed life, but a conduit for a celestial harmony, an instrument that was meant to be sung to be given life back, not taken from. The Arcanists' grim pronouncement of sacrifice was a cruel and elaborate deception, a lie designed to conceal their true intention. Lyra's mind reeled with the revelation. They hadn't been trying to save the city. They had been deliberately strangling its life source, creating the illusion of a dying heart so they could justify draining the populace's vital energy. It was a power grab on a scale so grand and so malevolent it was almost beyond comprehension. The Arcanists' motive was now sickeningly clear. By corrupting the Heartstone's harmony and creating a false narrative of sacrifice, they were not only securing their own positions of power but also hoarding the very essence of the people they were meant to serve. They were parasites, draining the city and its citizens to bolster their own abilities. The Heartstone wasn't dying, it was being murdered, and its final, gasping breaths were the tremors that shook the city. A cold wave of fear washed over Lyra as she stood in the silence of the forgotten chamber. The weight of her discovery was crushing. She, a simple tinker, had stumbled upon a truth so grave it could dismantle the very foundations of Ethelgard. But what could she do? The Arcanists were not only powerful mages, they had the city's guard under their sway, and their word was law. She had a song, a fragile melody and a hidden crystal, against their centuries of entrenched power and deceit. Clutching the crystal lattice to her chest, she scrambled out of the hidden chamber and back into the main conduit, her heart hammering against her ribs like a runaway piston. The tremors were growing more frequent now, the stone walls groaning under the strain. She knew she had to act, and soon. The Arcanists' final ritual was scheduled to begin in just 3 days, and once it started, it would be too late. The life force of the citizens would be irrevocably siphoned, and their cruel, beautiful lie would become a permanent reality. Her first instinct was to find a fellow tinker, but she knew the Arcanists had spies everywhere. No one was truly safe. She needed a person of authority, someone with enough integrity to listen, even if her story sounded like madness. Her thoughts turned to a city guard she had seen many times during her rounds, a man with a quiet, observant gaze and an air of weary disillusionment. He was a man of the people, not of the Arcanists, and his name was Kale. She knew where he patrolled and had to risk everything on the slim hope that he would believe her. The fate of Ethelgard rested on her ability to make him understand that a song, not a sacrifice, was the true key to salvation. Lyra found Kale in the lower market district, his expression a familiar mixture of vigilance and fatigue as he watched the citizens. The sight of her, a grease-stained tinker, approaching him with an expression of desperate urgency, seemed to surprise him. "Sir Kale," she began, her voice a ragged whisper, "the Arcanists are lying. There's a way to save the city, a true way." Kale's gaze was skeptical, a polite mask that did little to hide his doubt. "Everyone in this city has a theory, Lyra. But no one has a solution." "I do," she insisted, pulling a small, crude piece of the crystal lattice from her satchel. It was a shard she had carefully chipped off the main crystal, a tangible piece of her secret. She quickly but meticulously explained the Song of Restoration and how she had discovered it. She was met with a long, agonizing silence. Kale looked at the crystal shard in her hand, then at her, his eyes searching her face for any sign of deception. "A song, Lyra?" he finally asked, his voice gentle but firm. "A melody to save the city from falling?" Lyra knew her story sounded like pure fantasy, so she didn't try to argue with him. Instead, she took his hand and placed it on the crystal shard. Concentrating with all her might, she hummed the opening notes of the song, the melody barely audible over the murmur of the market. As the sound resonated, a soft, silver light began to emanate from the shard, pulsing in rhythm with her hum. Kale's eyes widened in disbelief as he felt a surprising warmth coursing through his palm. He looked down and saw that the tiny cracks in the stone beneath their feet were slowly knitting themselves together. The stone was mended, made whole again by the sheer power of the song. The healing was undeniable. Kale, a man who had seen a lifetime of lies and decay, was seeing a miracle with his own eyes. He looked at Lyra, the full weight of her words now clear, the truth behind them more solid than any stone. This wasn't magic, it was something pure, something more fundamental than any spell. As they stood in stunned silence, a figure cloaked in dark robes and a deep hood passed by, casting a brief, chilling glance in their direction. It was one of the Arcanist spies, their watchful eyes and ears everywhere. Kale's professional guard instinct took over. "If they learn you have this," he said, his voice dropping to a low, grave whisper, "they will not hesitate to kill you to keep this a secret." A new wave of fear washed over them, a stark realization of the danger they were in. Kale, now a true believer, quickly pulled Lyra into the shadows of a nearby alley, his grip on her arm surprisingly gentle. "We have to get to the people," he said, his gaze fixed on the bustling crowd. "We have to show them what you've shown me. They have to know the truth before it's too late." But the Arcanists had already begun their final preparations for the ritual, and the city's mechanisms were beginning to shudder to a complete halt. The final act was upon them. The night before the purification ritual, Ethelgard was steeped in a thick, palpable dread. The air was heavy and still, the usual sounds of tinkering and life replaced by a mournful silence. Lyra and Kale spent the entire night in a quiet, forgotten corner of her workshop, huddled over a new project. Their plan was audacious and terrifyingly simple. They couldn't hope to convince the masses with words alone. They needed to show them the Song of Restoration in action, to create an undeniable spectacle that would shatter the Arcanists' lies for good. Lyra would use her unparalleled tinkering skills to build a small amplifier, a miniature version of the Heartstone's conduits, capable of broadcasting the song's restorative power to a wider audience. Kale, meanwhile, used his knowledge of the city's network to discreetly send out messages to a handful of trusted guards and a few dissident tinkers he knew. He told them nothing of the song, only to meet him in the central square just before the start of the ritual for a matter of grave importance. It was all they could do for now. Their work was a desperate race against time. Lyra's hands, so often steady and precise, trembled from exhaustion and nerves as she connected delicate wires and polished tiny pieces of crystal. Kale, meanwhile, stood watch at the entrance to the workshop, his sword drawn and ready, his face a mask of grim determination. "We have to be fast, Lyra," he urged, "the Arcanists are sealing off the lower districts." Lyra nodded, her entire being focused on the task at hand. She had to believe in her own skills, in the inherent truth of the song. The amplifier, a small, intricate device of polished brass and glowing crystal, was the result of a lifetime of a tinker's knowledge. It was her legacy, her defiance made tangible. As dawn approached, Kale placed his hand on her shoulder. "It's ready," she whispered, her voice hoarse with fatigue. They emerged from the workshop into a city that felt like a tomb. The streets were deserted, the people having retreated to their homes to await their fate. Only the Arcanists and their most loyal guard units patrolled the streets, their grim faces illuminated by the eerie glow of the Heartstone, which now throbbed with a slow, sickly pulse. Lyra felt a surge of nausea and fear, but Kale's hand on her arm was a steady, grounding presence. "Don't look at them," he instructed. "Look at the people, Lyra. We're doing this for them." The central square was a scene of solemn dread. The Arcanists, cloaked in their finest robes, were gathered at the main podium, their faces somber as they began the final prayers before the ritual. A small crowd, a mix of curious onlookers and those who had nowhere else to go, had gathered. Lyra and Kale stood on the outskirts, the amplifier hidden under a simple cloth, a tiny instrument of hope against a wave of overwhelming despair. The time for words was over. It was time to sing. Lyra felt the eyes of 1,000 people on her, all of them silent, waiting, and full of a profound dread. She and Kale had pushed through the crowd and now stood at the foot of the podium where the Arcanists were delivering their final, chilling sermon. The air was thick with the weight of impending doom, and the Arcanists' words, full of empty promises of salvation and the necessity of sacrifice, were like a poison seeping into the collective heart of the city. Lyra clutched the amplifier, its cool metal a steady presence in her trembling hands. This was it. The moment she had risked everything for. Kale gave her a subtle nod, his eyes unwavering. With a deep, shuddering breath, Lyra activated the amplifier. It hummed to life, a low, resonant drone that captured the attention of a few people nearby. The sound was unfamiliar, a stark contrast to the Arcanists' grave pronouncements, and people began to turn, their heads tilting in curiosity. Then, using a small tuning fork, Lyra began to hum the first few notes of the Song of Restoration. Her voice, at first just a soft whisper, was amplified by the crystal, and a gentle wave of silver light emanated from the device. The light shimmered over the ground, reaching out to the crumbling street and the base of a nearby stone building. The effect was immediate and breathtaking. The cracks in the stones began to knit themselves together, the crumbling mortar turning to a pristine white. The dust that had covered the ground began to shimmer and dissipate, revealing the vibrant, clean stone of the ancient city. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, a wave of shock and awe that rippled through the square. The Arcanists, sensing the shift in the crowd's attention, stopped their chanting. Elder Valerius, his face a gaunt mask of fury, pointed a trembling finger at Lyra. "It's a trick. A profane spell," he bellowed. "She is corrupting the sacred energies with dark magic." But the crowd was no longer listening to him. They were watching the magic unfold before their eyes. The magic of a simple tinker. The healing light spread, restoring a shattered statue to its former glory. People began to fall to their knees, not out of fear, but from a profound sense of relief and hope. The Arcanists, their faces contorted with rage, realized they were losing control. Elder Valerius turned to the guards standing loyally beside the podium. "Arrest the girl and her accomplice," he commanded, his voice a furious snarl. "They are criminals." A few guards, still loyal to the Arcanists, began to push through the crowd. But Kale was ready. Stepping forward, he drew his sword and pointed it not at the people, but at the Arcanists themselves. "You are the criminals," he declared, his voice ringing with a newfound authority. "You plan to sacrifice our people to feed your own power. Lyra has the truth, and she has the real song to save us all." The crowd, seeing a guard they trusted turn against the Arcanists, roared in defiance. Lyra and Kale, with the crowd's support, turned and made a break for the core of the city. The final confrontation would not be in a public square, but in the belly of the beast. The rush toward the core was a desperate, chaotic blur. The Arcanists, their elaborate ritual shattered and their lies exposed, wasted no time in unleashing their full fury. Their cloaked forms moved with a speed that belied their age, and the air around them crackled with malevolent energy. They conjured forth magical constructs of pure darkness, twisted facsimiles of the stone golems, and sent them hurtling toward Lyra and Kale. The ground beneath their feet shook violently as the constructs slammed into the fleeing crowd, their massive fists demolishing parts of the street. Kale, a seasoned guard, moved with surprising grace and speed, his sword a flashing arc of steel as he sliced through the dark constructs, buying Lyra precious seconds. The crowd, a mix of terrified citizens and newly emboldened rebels, fought alongside them, armed with whatever they could find, shovels, tools, even their bare fists. This was no longer just about survival, it was about reclaiming their dignity. Lyra, her heart hammering in her chest, never once stopped running. She clutched the amplifier, its silver light a small, fragile beacon against the encroaching shadows. She could hear the Arcanists' furious incantations behind them, their spells raining down, but the crowd's courage was an unbreakable shield. They were protecting her, the girl with the song. As they descended deeper into the city's underbelly, into the labyrinthine conduits of the central golem, the air grew thick with ozone and the metallic tang of decay. The Heartstone's pulse, which had been a slow thud, began to speed up, a chaotic, terrified beat that echoed through the stone walls. It was a dying heartbeat, a sign that the Arcanists' malevolent corruption was tightening its hold. Lyra knew they were running out of time. They reached the main chamber, the vast, echoing space where the Heartstone pulsed. The sight was even more terrifying than she had imagined. The Heartstone, a colossal, beautiful crystal that should have radiated with a pure, white light, was now a sickly, pulsating mess. Its surface was marred by thick, grotesque growths of a dark, crystalline parasite, a result of the vile, corrupted magic the Arcanists had been feeding it. The growths pulsed with a faint, malevolent red light, and from their foul forms, whispers of discord and pain emanated. This was the source of the sickness, the true reason for Ethelgard's decay. The Arcanists were already there, waiting. Elder Valerius stood at the stone's base, his hands raised, his face a contorted mask of hatred as he chanted the final incantation of the ritual. The Heartstone began to glow with a sickly, malevolent red light. Lyra's heart sank. She was too late. The ritual had already begun. The sound of 1,000 voices, a collective moan of pain and despair, echoed through the chamber as the ritual began to draw their life force. Lyra watched in horror as the city's inhabitants, their faces gaunt and pale with terror, began to collapse from the sudden siphoning of their life force. She felt it herself, a cold, draining sensation, as if her own vitality was being pulled from her body against her will. This was the Arcanist's true goal, not salvation, but a cruel and utter domination. A wave of despair washed over her, a crushing hopelessness that threatened to drown her. But then she looked at Kale, who stood beside her, his face a mask of grim determination, his sword ready. He was ready to fight to the last breath, even if he could only delay the inevitable. And behind him, the small group of rebels who had followed them stood firm, their eyes fixed on her. They believed in her. They believed in her song. The knowledge of their sacrifice, of their unwavering faith, was like a jolt of fire to her weary soul. She couldn't give up. Not now. Not when so much was at stake. She drew a deep breath, pushing past the terror and the pain. There was still a chance, however slim. The Heartstone's pulse was still weak, still vulnerable. She had to sing now, before it was too late. With a nod to Kale, she pulled out the amplifier, its polished brass and gleaming crystal glinting in the dim light of the chamber. She knew it was a desperate act, but it was their only hope. Elder Valerius, seeing her move, let out a furious roar. "You're too late, Lyra," he bellowed. "The Heartstone will be ours." He turned his magical might on her, a concentrated bolt of arcane energy streaking toward her. But Kale was faster. He leaped in front of her, his shield raised, deflecting the blow with a shower of sparks. The Arcanists, seeing their plan threatened, turned their full attention on the two of them, their spells raining down like a hail of fire. But the handful of rebels and guards who had followed them rushed forward, their simple tools and courage forming an unbreakable barrier. Lyra, safe behind their defiant shield, began to hum the first notes of the Song of Restoration. Her voice, at first just a soft whisper, filled the cavernous chamber. It was a pure, resonant melody, a direct contrast to the Arcanists' chaotic chants. As her song grew stronger, the parasitic growths on the Heartstone's surface began to shrivel and crumble, turning to black dust. The stone's true, radiant light began to shine through, a magnificent, silver-gold glow that filled the entire chamber. The Arcanists, seeing their power wane, shrieked in fury. They turned their spells on her, a furious storm of arcane energy. But Lyra kept singing, her voice growing stronger and more confident with each note. She poured every ounce of her soul into the song, her melody weaving itself into the very fabric of the Heartstone. With a final, triumphant note, the Heartstone sang its own song in return, a powerful, harmonious melody of rebirth and renewal. The Heartstone's song was a torrent of pure, unadulterated energy, a wave of silver-gold light that washed over the chamber with a force that was both gentle and overwhelming. The Arcanists, caught in the wave, screamed in agony as their corrupted powers were stripped from them, their bodies crumbling into a fine, black dust that dissipated in the air. The parasitic growths on the Heartstone's surface, starved of their dark energy source, dissolved, leaving the crystal glowing with a brilliant, pristine light. The oppressive gloom that had clung to the city for so long was lifted in an instant, and sunlight, a sight unseen in Ethelgard for decades, streamed down from the cavernous ceiling. The Heartstone, no longer a sick and dying thing, hummed with a powerful, life-giving rhythm, its song resonating through every stone, every gear, every fiber of the city. Lyra, exhausted but triumphant, felt the return of her own vitality and the life force of the citizens she had seen collapse moments before. The city's mechanisms, silent for so long, began to turn once more, their gears grinding and humming with renewed life. The people of Ethelgard, feeling the sudden, glorious return of their strength, looked up at the sky in shock and awe. The stone golems, the founders, began to stir, the cracks in their bodies sealing themselves shut as the runes on their bodies began to glow with a brilliant, golden light. A cheer erupted from the crowd that had gathered outside the Heartstone chamber, a thunderous roar of jubilation that reverberated through the city. They had been given a second chance, a new lease on life, all because of a simple tinker and her song. Lyra, her body weak but her spirit soaring, leaned against a newly restored stone wall, a smile gracing her lips for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. Kale, his face streaked with soot and sweat, walked up to her, his own smile a brilliant, joyous sight. "You did it, Lyra," he said, his voice full of a profound reverence. "You saved us all." The days that followed were a whirlwind of celebration and change. The Arcanists' betrayal was laid bare for all to see, their centuries-old deception exposed. Their opulent spires were dismantled, their dark magic purged from the city's foundations. Lyra, the girl who had saved the city, was now a legend, her name on every tongue. The people hailed her as a hero, a savior. They offered her a place on the new council, a life of power and prestige, a life she had never even dared to dream of. But as the cheers and accolades rained down upon her, Lyra knew that was not her path. The song had given her a purpose, a strength she didn't know she had, but her heart belonged to the gears and the mechanisms of Ethelgard. Her place was not on a throne, but in her workshop, with the tools and the quiet hum of a healthy, vibrant city. She chose to remain a tinker, a humble mechanic of the reborn city. Lyra's choice, to decline a position of power and return to her simple life, was met with a mixture of surprise and profound respect. The people of Ethelgard saw in her not just a savior, but a symbol of their own potential, a reminder that the power to change their world resided not with the privileged few, but with the common person. Lyra's workshop, once a solitary refuge, became a destination for those seeking her counsel and her wisdom. She taught her fellow tinkers the principles of the Heartstone's harmony, how to listen to the city's song and maintain its rhythm without the need for the Arcanists' dark magic. Kale, who had stood by her side through it all, chose to remain with her. He was offered a command position in the city's guard, a role that would have made him a powerful man, but he too declined. His newfound purpose, he said, was to protect not just the city's laws, but its people, to ensure that a tyranny like the Arcanists would never rise again. He became her constant companion, her partner in the quiet, simple work of rebuilding a city. Their lives fell into a quiet, contented rhythm. The days were filled with the familiar sounds of Lyra's tools and the gentle, humming glow of the Heartstone. Kale, meanwhile, used his immense knowledge of the city's infrastructure to help the people, coordinating work crews and ensuring that every district, from the wealthiest to the poorest, was getting the resources it needed to rebuild. He was a force of quiet good, a true protector of the people. In the evenings, they would sit on the rooftop of Lyra's workshop, watching the sunset over a city that was no longer gray, but vibrant and full of life. The stone golems, their immense forms now a deep, burnished gold in the evening light, stood as a testament to the city's resilience. They no longer carried the burden of a city in decay, but the hope of a people reborn, and their ancient song, once a forgotten echo, now sang freely. Over the years, the tale of Lyra, the tinker who saved the city with a song, became a legend. It was told to children in their beds and shared around campfires. But to Lyra and Kale, it was simply their story, the story of how they found each other and, in the process, found a new way of life. A way of life built not on power or prestige, but on mutual respect, trust, and the profound joy of building something beautiful and lasting together. Ethelgard was no longer a city of fear and decay, but a place of hope and renewal, and Lyra, the girl who had lived her entire life in the shadows, was now a part of its very light. The city's song was her song, and it was a song of triumph, a melody of a life that had been saved and a future that had been won. The initial period of rebuilding was a monumental effort. The city, so long neglected by the Arcanists, needed a complete overhaul. Lyra, with her intimate knowledge of Ethelgard's internal workings, became the de facto leader of the reconstruction effort. She worked tirelessly alongside her fellow tinkers to repair the failing clockwork mechanisms, to re-establish the city's water and energy conduits, and to restore the city's immense infrastructure. Kale, meanwhile, was everywhere at once, organizing the people, delegating tasks, and ensuring that the work was done fairly and efficiently. His calm demeanor and unwavering integrity made him a natural leader, and the people, who had been so long divided by the Arcanists' lies, found a new sense of community and purpose. They were no longer victims waiting for a savior, they were the masters of their own destiny. Lyra's greatest project was the complete overhaul of the Heartstone's chamber. She and Kale spent months painstakingly dismantling the Arcanists' corrupt machinery, replacing it with new, elegant mechanisms of her own design. These new conduits were not designed to draw power from the stone, but to amplify its beautiful, harmonious song, ensuring that it resonated throughout the entire city. The work was difficult, and there were days when the sheer magnitude of the task seemed overwhelming. But Lyra never gave up. She had found a purpose, a calling that was more fulfilling than any title or position of power could ever be. She was a guardian of the city's heart, a keeper of its song. And with Kale by her side, she felt that anything was possible. Their shared work brought them closer together. They were more than just partners in the city's rebirth, they were partners in life. In the quiet moments after a long day of work, they would sit together in her workshop, eating a simple meal and talking about their dreams for the future. They spoke of a new Ethelgard, a city built on a foundation of trust and honesty, a place where no one would ever have to live in fear again. Lyra, who had spent her entire life in solitude, found in Kale a kindred spirit, a man who saw her not just for her skills, but for the person she was. Their relationship grew slowly, naturally, a quiet, steady flame that grew brighter with each passing day. It was a love built on a shared purpose and a deep, mutual respect, a love that was a true reflection of the beautiful, living city they had helped to create. Ethelgard, which had once been a city of broken stone and shattered dreams, was now a city of hope and possibility, and their love was a testament to that. The Arcanists' fall from grace had sent a shockwave through the region, and soon, emissaries from neighboring city-states arrived in Ethelgard, curious to see the city that had so miraculously saved itself. They were astonished to find a society that was not only thriving but also functioning without a ruling class of mages. Lyra and Kale, as the city's de facto leaders, met with the emissaries, and Lyra, with Kale's steady support, told them the true story of the Heartstone. She spoke not of a dying artifact, but of a celestial song, of a source of power that could be harmonized with, not exploited. Her words were met with skepticism, but Kale, a man of quiet authority, corroborated her story. He explained how the Arcanists had manipulated the Heartstone's energy for their own gain, and how their betrayal had nearly brought the city to its knees. The emissaries left with a new understanding of Ethelgard, and a few months later, the city-states began to send their own scholars and engineers to study Ethelgard's new way of life. Lyra and Kale, with the help of a small council of tinkers and citizens, established a new system of governance, a council of common people who were not chosen for their power or wealth, but for their integrity and their commitment to the city's well-being. It was a radical new idea, a society built on a foundation of honesty and trust, and it was a beacon of hope for a world that had long been ruled by tyranny and deceit. Lyra's life, which had once been defined by solitude and fear, was now filled with a sense of purpose and belonging she had never known. She was a leader, a mentor, and a symbol of a new kind of power, a power that came from within. As the years passed, Ethelgard continued to thrive. The stone golems stood tall and proud, their forms no longer crumbling, but glowing with a soft, steady light. The city's population grew, and its people, free from the Arcanists' oppressive rule, embraced a new era of innovation and creativity. Lyra's workshop, once a solitary refuge, was now a hub of activity, a place where young tinkers came to learn not just the mechanics of the city, but the philosophy behind them. She taught them to listen to the city's song, to understand its rhythm, and to work in harmony with its energy. She was more than just a teacher, she was a living legend, a testament to the power of one person's courage. Lyra and Kale's love story, much like the city they had helped to rebuild, was one of quiet strength and enduring devotion. They never had a grand wedding or a public declaration of love, their bond was a private, sacred thing, a testament to their shared journey and the deep respect they had for one another. They simply existed together, their lives intertwined in a rhythm that was as natural and effortless as the city's song. Lyra continued to work in her workshop, her hands still stained with grease, her face now bearing the gentle lines of a life well lived. Kale, meanwhile, oversaw the city's reconstruction and its continued well-being, his calm demeanor a source of comfort and stability for the people. They were a team, a partnership built on a foundation of trust and honesty, a love that was a true reflection of the beautiful, thriving city they had helped to create. Their greatest joy came from the next generation of Ethelgard's tinkers, the young people who came to Lyra's workshop to learn from the legend herself. They were a new kind of generation, a generation that had never known the fear and oppression of the Arcanists' rule. They were bright, optimistic, and full of a profound sense of purpose. Lyra taught them not just the mechanics of the city's clockwork, but the philosophy of its harmony. She taught them that the city was a living thing, a beautiful song that needed to be cared for, nurtured, and respected. She taught them that a tinker's greatest tool was not their wrench or their hammer, but their ability to listen, to feel, and to understand the city's rhythm. And she taught them that their greatest power was not their ability to fix things, but their courage to stand up for what was right, to speak the truth even when it was difficult, and to fight for a future where everyone was free. Kale, meanwhile, taught them the importance of integrity and the power of a single person's courage. He taught them that true strength was not found in a sword or a shield, but in the unwavering belief in one's own values. He taught them that a leader's greatest responsibility was not to command, but to serve, to protect, and to empower the people. And he taught them that a society's greatest defense was not its walls or its army, but the courage of its citizens. Lyra and Kale, together, were the living embodiment of Ethelgard's new way of life. They were the city's guardians, its teachers, and its heart. As the years turned into decades, Ethelgard continued to flourish. The city's reputation as a bastion of freedom and ingenuity grew, and people from all over the world came to witness its marvels. Lyra's story, once a local legend, had become a global phenomenon, a tale of a simple tinker who had saved a city with a song. But to Lyra, it was still just her story, the story of how she had found her voice and, in the process, found a life she had never dared to dream of. She and Kale, now in their later years, lived a peaceful, contented life. They had built their home near Lyra's workshop, a quiet, cozy place filled with the warmth of a life well lived. Their days were filled with the simple joys of a shared life, the quiet moments of a shared meal, the easy rhythm of their conversation, the warmth of a shared glance. The one topic that Lyra and Kale never spoke of was the Arcanists. Their names had been purged from the city's records, their memory a dark, forgotten chapter in Ethelgard's history. But Lyra never truly forgot. The memories were still there, the silent nights in her workshop, the oppressive fear, the constant threat of the Arcanists' malevolent power. But the memories no longer held any power over her. They were a part of her story, a testament to the pain she had endured and the strength she had found. She had learned that forgiveness was not about forgetting or excusing the evil that had been done to her, it was about freeing herself from the power that evil held over her. She was not a victim, she was a survivor, and her story was not a tragedy, but a triumph. One day, while working in her workshop, Lyra came across an old, tarnished gear, a relic from the time of the Arcanists. The gear was rusted and corroded, a testament to the city's decay. Lyra's first instinct was to throw it away, to purge it from her workshop and her life. But then she looked at it, and she saw not a symbol of the past, but a symbol of the present. She saw a gear that had once been part of a corrupt machine, but that now, with a little care and a lot of work, could be part of a new, beautiful one. She spent the entire day meticulously cleaning and polishing the gear, restoring it to its former glory. When she was finished, she placed it in the center of her new workshop, a constant reminder that no matter how dark the past, a new future was always possible. The gear, once a symbol of decay, was now a symbol of renewal, a testament to the power of transformation. Lyra and Kale lived a long and full life together. They were the living heart of Ethelgard, its soul and its conscience. As they grew older, they spent their days in quiet contemplation, watching the city they had helped to rebuild, a city that was now a testament to their courage and their love. They were surrounded by the love of their family, the generations of young tinkers who had passed through their workshop, and the countless citizens whose lives they had touched. Their story, once a legend, was now a history, a part of the city's very foundation. Lyra's hair, once a deep, raven black, was now a soft, gentle white, and her hands, once stained with grease, were now calloused and gnarled with a lifetime of work. But her eyes, the same eyes that had once held so much fear, now held a profound, quiet wisdom. She often thought about the years of silent suffering she had endured under the Arcanists' rule. The fear, the humiliation, the constant dread. But she also thought about the small, quiet moments that had given her strength, the feeling of the sun on her face, the sound of her tools against metal, the feeling of a shared glance with a person she trusted. She realized that her greatest power had not been her ability to sing a song, but her courage to choose life over death, hope over despair, and truth over lies. She had learned that our stories are not defined by the pain we endure, but by the choices we make in the aftermath. She had chosen to live, to love, and to build, and in doing so, she had found a life that was more beautiful and more meaningful than she could have ever imagined. One evening, as she and Kale sat on their porch, watching the sunset over the city, she felt a profound sense of peace. The city's song was a soft, gentle hum in the evening air, a lullaby of peace and contentment. The stone golems, their forms a deep, burnished gold in the fading light, stood tall and proud, a testament to a city that had faced its greatest fear and emerged stronger. Lyra looked at Kale, her partner, her best friend, the man who had stood by her side through it all. He was her rock, her constant, her anchor in a world of chaos. She reached out and took his hand, her gnarled fingers intertwining with his. He looked at her and smiled, a smile that was full of a profound, quiet love. And in that moment, she knew that she was home. Lyra's journey, from a simple tinker to the savior of a city, was not an easy one. It was a path marked by fear, by despair, and by a constant struggle against a power that was both overwhelming and malevolent. But it was also a path marked by courage, by hope, and by the profound love of a city and a man who believed in her. Lyra's story is a testament to the power of one person's courage, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can be found. Her song, the Song of Restoration, was not just a melody, it was a promise that a new day was always possible, that a new future could always be built. Her life, once a tragedy, was now a symphony, a beautiful, powerful melody of triumph and grace. Our stories are not defined by the pain we endure, but by the choices we make in the aftermath. I was just a tinker, but I found the courage to stand against a powerful system of lies and corruption, and in doing so, I found my voice. I found my strength, and I found a future filled with joy and hope. I hope my story, my song, inspires you to find yours. Remember, a single act of defiance can change the course of history, and a voice, no matter how small, can be the most powerful force for change. The city's song is a constant reminder that in every life, there is a melody waiting to be sung, a harmony waiting to be found. Don't let your past define your future. If you enjoyed this story and wish to hear more tales of courage and transformation, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me continue to share these stories and to remind others that even in the darkest of times, hope can be found.